PGA Nation, we are back, and it's a big week because we welcome back our very own OG Sia Najad. Sia, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing well. Good to be back. I love seeing everybody in the chat already. Japan 5, who I know is a supporter of mine, if not a lot of other people on this show. He says, I'm here, but I don't know what's going on, but I'm here. See, that's like a supporter that we want on our side. He's like, you guys are doing something. I'm in on that. Listen, man, it's been a whirlwind. That's why I haven't been on the show over the last, 6, 7, 8 episodes. As everybody, well, some of you know, I moved from Fort Lauderdale to DC. A couple new opportunities presented themselves. So I've just kind of been in the middle of a move and a new opportunity and still doing my old opportunities. So it's been a whirlwind. Of course, all that's happening during football season, which you know is my busiest time. So I'm super excited that I can be here with you. I know this is kind of like the last event in terms of like the season. We're gonna have like a little bit of a break, which is fine, but I should be back after the break, if not like every single show, certainly more than I have been. So I'm super happy to be back.
We're super excited to have you back drafting with us tonight. But as you all know, even on the weeks or the nights that you can't make it to draft with us, you always drop your plays. You come into the chat, always helping us out, which we appreciate. Welcome back. Spence, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing well. It's nice to have you back on this show, Sia. I know all of us missed you, whether it's in the chat or Joel and I on the show. So welcome back here. And I think this is a fun tournament for all of us to run through together. It's clearly the best tournament that we have seen during this fall season. There's a lot of high-end talent here. There's players that are fighting for different things moving into the 2024 season. We'll talk about the course in a second because I do think it's a unique concept with it being split between the first 2 days and then you go back to the Sea Island for the final two. But fun event to wrap up this year that I hope for everybody out there that's listened to the show has turned into a successful and profitable season.
There you have it. The RSM Classic week. As you said, it's 2 courses, which makes the breakdown and your work cut out for you a little bit tougher, Spence. But we do have a little bit of history here. We have a little sense. But to your point, you know, it's a little bit upgraded field than we've been used to seeing. So it's kind of like a nice send-off before the long holiday break and we get back into the full swing of things. So I'm excited for a fun week of golf. But Spence, enlighten us. What are you looking for on the courses this week?
So Sea Island was designed in 1928 by Harry Colt and C.H. Allison. It did undergo some restorations from Tom Fazio in 1998. I always come on these shows and talk about Fazio designs. The extreme takeaway of that is going to be the undulation that can be found throughout any of his properties. I don't know if that's necessarily going to be as impactful here because the contextual setup is a little bit different than we get from him here compared to some other venues. He kept most of those link style quirks from the original layout. We see that with easy to hit fairways that are going to be a necessity to locate since the field connects on 80% of their greens in regulation when hitting their approach shots from the short grass. That total ranks as highly as any course on tour. It's one of the reasons why there's a reduction in that around the green performance that I talked about. You have width of these fairways that also average 7.2 yards wider than your standard setup. I think all of that's rather basic from an expectation standpoint. You need to find a bunch of fairways. You need to use that iron proximity from 100 to 175 yards, 8.2% increase in that range. I do think, though, that you kind of just mentioned it, Joel, and I talked about it at the beginning of the show. There's a wrinkle thrown into the equation here because players are going to split their first 2 days on Thursday and Friday between the secondary plantation course and Sea Island. In fairness, that's probably the one noticeable variation because I do think you at least have some similarities in the green size between both venues. You're going to have a par 5 scoring difference from it going between a par 72 to a par 70. For myself, when I built a model, I decided to look primarily just at Sea Island. Your weekend rounds take place there. 75% of your total rounds take place there. I don't necessarily want to build such an elaborate model when you have such a one-off difference on Thursday and Friday where it may not matter on the weekend. Wind could play a factor on the more exposed Sea Island property. There's that eye-popping 9 par 4s that measure between 400 to 450 yards. I'm going to call it 10 for this show just because there's one outside at 452. but it kind of has that same emphasis that pops up over and over again. You're going to have to make putts from outside 10 feet, 8.3% more putts get made from that distance. But for me, it's that three-pronged approach of locate the fairway, create as many makeable looks as you can with your irons, and then try to make some putts with your flat stick on this soft Bermuda surface that has historically been much speedier than expected. So that definitely pushes me in a direction of a player that I'm looking for, or players that I am looking for this venue. I think that's one of the recipes for success that I found last year when I was able to hit Adam Svensson at over 160 to 1. Kind of the same profile that I built again for this week, but excited to get into this draft.
There you have it. Super helpful context, very helpful in finding an edge of understanding the profile of golfer that we can or should have some success at a tournament and courses like this. Now, this week we're changing it up a bit. If you tuned in last week, I'm going to pull up the draft board now, a 3-man draft. We're going to stick with that tonight. So we're going to go 3-man. We didn't confirm. We think Spencer won. He had the winner, and he had Norin, so he likely won. But I definitely had 6 of 6 too. So it was a good week. We had some good drafts last week. Running it back this week. Audience, let us know what you think. Do you like this 3-man draft, or do you prefer the 4-man? Give us your feedback. We love your feedback. That's what makes this show run. For anyone that might be new tonight, as a quick reminder, this works like your traditional snake draft that you would do in a standard fantasy football league, where the order tonight's going to go Spence, me, and Sia. Audience, Sia is back leading the audience's draft like he normally would. You guys will have the wheel, so you'll pick 3rd and 4th, and then it will come backward. You do have to stay within the DraftKings salary. So you can't just take all the best guys or all the top salaries. You do need to make sure you draft a team that you can actually afford in a real DraftKings lineup. With that being said, Spencer, with the first pick, you're on the clock.
So there are a handful of routes to go in, and I think being cognizant of ownership is clearly something that matters for events like this, where the popularity gets condensed in a lot of the same spots. And I'm going to say that as I take the player that's going to very likely be the most popular pick on the board, I'll have to get unique and different in other spots. I'm not necessarily worried about that. I'm going to take Russell Henley at 9,700. If you look at the betting market, and I think there's a very strong reason why this has occurred, he opened at 24, 25 to 1, depending on what book you got on Monday. He has very quickly catapulted himself into that 14 to 16 to 1 zone at a lot of shops. I think there's a real reason behind that movement. Number 1 in my model in strokes gain total on easy courses. Number 1 in my model in strokes gain total on short courses. I've been making the argument, or at least made the argument during the Ryder Cup, that I thought he should have been a Ryder Cup pick. We'll never know if that was the correct answer. I know that whatever the USA team did was not the correct choice with some of the picks that they made, but I at least think, according to my model, that Russell Henley is a legitimate top 20 player in the world. I don't know if he's necessarily viewed that way. We have now gotten this correction inside of the market. When you look at the betting board on DraftKings, when we talk about price tags, those numbers are going to stand pat with it from where they're entered. I think if they could redo it, he'd probably be a golfer that'd be over $10,000. So I'll take the rebate that here on Henley, and I feel good about him to be able to build a lineup from.
Yeah, I mean, I don't hate that, Joel. I'm curious what you think of the Henley pick. I think it's probably a good place to start. Like Spencer mentioned the ownership. Right now, what I'm seeing, it's not that bad. Again, we during this show, we're always looking at different numbers. So Spencer, I'm curious what your number is, but what I'm seeing right now is not like he's not even close to the highest person. What are you seeing right now?
So I have him as the highest. I take an aggregated total between 3 places. As the week goes on and as we get into Wednesday afternoon, some of these numbers will become a little bit better for me, but I have him at 23.5% almost, which is 3% above anybody else.
Yeah, I suspect that a certain somebody that might get picked pretty soon is going to end up being owned more than he is. Joel, it's your turn. I do want to point out, though, because it does look like we have a couple, and maybe they've come and gone because they don't understand the format. And Joel, I know you explained it, but for those of you, for some reason, if you're in this chat, and I think there might be a couple of you, but you don't play DFS golf or PGA DFS, A, you're kind of missing out. And B, all you need to do to participate and to do nominations when it gets to the see audience pick is just know that, like, have some idea of the price. And you can just pull that up on your phone or really anywhere. Go to DraftKings and pull up the pricing for the RSM, and you'll be able to nominate people. We'll have 2 to nominate after Joel's pick. There was one other thing. Chris Kish says, do you guys ever do season-long draft fantasy season? I don't. Sounds fun. Spencer and Joel, do you guys do season-long fantasy stuff?
Yeah, I actually was in a league for the FSGA this year that we put it together. Season long is a lot of fun. It takes a unique concept to run that's going to be different than a draft like this, since you're holding players throughout the entire year with it. But the more that they can make it, which they are doing as they get better with make it, the more you can make it like fantasy football. It has that same exact recipe to it. So it's a lot of fun out there for anybody who hasn't tried it yet.
So I did it for the first time this year, and it was a lot of fun. But like with fantasy golf, we know because we've been doing this show for a few years, and from when we started doing the show till now, fantasy golf has had a big boom. I think it's got a lot more attention. People have gotten a lot more into it. I do think there's a market for it to expand, especially into season long. We used an app that it really wasn't set up right for a season long golf league. I think some of the apps, maybe Yahoo or what have you, can set that up and get better at it. I think it'll be even better and improve as more resources go into setting this up for a season-long fantasy golf. But doing it for the first time this year, it was a lot of fun.
All right. Well, that answers that. Joel, we need to answer the question, who's your first pick for the RSM Classic?
So I'm going to go with another popular player. I think the guy I'm taking here is pretty similar to Russell Henley. I like the Russell Henley play as well. I mean, he probably is the favorite to win the tournament, and you're getting him at a relative discount as he's not the most expensive golfer. And I think that same concept applies to my pick, as it's a discount for a guy that I put at top 3 or 4 talents right now, especially considering current form in the field. And that's going to be Eric Cole at $9K. Eric Cole is just playing great golf. My biggest concern with taking him here is his ownership, which I do see also to be very high, up there close to Henley. But his recent form has been outstanding. I mean, if you look at Cole's last couple of outputs, it's 2 top 5s in a row between the Shiners and the Zozo. His distances on this course, the priority distance you want to look at with his iron play, are excellent. Maybe not the most accurate driver, but definitely not a flaw of his. So I think that he'll check a lot of boxes in a weaker field. I think this is another tournament that we should see a really good result from Cole.
I was going to nominate, obviously I always let the audience do their nominations. Sometimes I pipe in, sometimes I don't, but Cole was going to be my pick for sure. And I noticed somebody in the chat, it's Brent, he says, Cole is my first nomination. Darn. I was going to second that right away. I love his ability to score. I really love everything about Eric Cole. And frankly, I think his number to win this thing is still I think it's gone down. It's been bet down a little bit. Maybe Spencer, you can verify this. I saw, and I'm just looking at DraftKings, mind you, I think I saw 28-1 last time I checked, which I think it was in maybe the 35 range when it opened. Joel, you're nodding your head. Is that basically what you're saying? Spencer, same to you. Joel, you first.
Yeah, I see it on DraftKings right now at 28-1.
Yeah, the best number, at least at these legal books that I can find, would be, I think you can still get 30-1 at BetMGM and BetRivers, but that number has come down from the opener.
Spencer, as we wait for nominations, and perhaps we've already got 2 locked in, somebody let me know. It says Brent says looks like Connor's in post, and we'll get to evaluating those in a second. I like both of those picks, but do you see Eric Cole as value, Spencer, in the outright market at 28-1?
I think he's definitely value here on DraftKings. Like Joel mentioned it best that he's going to be very popular, and I don't know what his actual win equity is because we haven't seen him get across the finish line yet, but this is one of those players that the market continues to undervalue, at least the potential that he shows every single week. He may not be winning these events, but he's a steady producer inside this top 10 over and over again. Really, inside of my model, the only flaw that I have for him would be the driver. Mm-hmm. If you could tell me that gets mitigated somewhat with the wide open fairways and the ability then to use his proximity play and the putter, that's a strength for him. That's the recipe for success. So As long as he's not missing fairways, I would believe that this is a venue that presents higher win equity for him than maybe some of the other events.
So for some of these inaccurate drivers, is it also kind of a club down event where you're not going to have driver in hand, like more than some of these courses that are a little bit longer?
I think there's a handful of players that it makes it more intriguing for that reason. And that's one of the answers for why when I build a model, I never just take the standard strokes gained or accuracy numbers that you get from a driving accuracy percentage there, because every single venue is different. It's a different venue when you have a 7,700 yard course with thick rough at the property. It's a unique venue here when you're sub 7,200 yards and you need to find the center. Like 80% of greens and regulations get hit when you find the short grass off the tee, but you're also able to club down naturally with there being 10 holes at Sea Island that stretch between 400 to 460 yards. You don't necessarily need to pull driver out on every single hole. So I do think it helps certain players more than others. I'm sure a lot of those names will come up for various reasons, but yeah, I don't think that the answer of this is somebody's accuracy percentage is necessarily quite indicative for a course like this.
Right. And Joel, let me get your comments on Connors and Poston. I mean, I think I'm not surprised that these were the nominations. I think they both make sense. Both seem to be dialed in with their ball striking just typically. And, you know, Connors, the putting's been okay. Poston, the putting's been great. Yeah, Poston's history here, I think, is interesting. It's like very good and bad, while Connors is kind of middling. It's like good, but it's not anything great. These are guys I'm probably not going to have in my lineup because I think they're going to get some ownership, and I just would rather go like a different direction. But I don't mind either of these picks. Are either of these two guys you're really behind this week?
I'll be honest, I like both picks.
Yeah.
I think both guys have a lot of upside, especially in this field. I think these are two of the guys that are like salary savers, up and comers in a loaded field. And a field like this, I think you're getting, I would consider them elite talents, and you're getting them at under 10K, which I would be happy with. I think it's a saver. Connor's ownership looks more than reasonable, so Connor's wouldn't scare me at all. Poston, you are going to carry some ownership, so it would be hard to build lineups going with, Poston and Cole or Henley with eating a lot of ownership there, but playing one of those guys for sure.
Yeah. Real quick question, Joel, before we get to your pick, Spencer, we haven't seen Connors in a while. Do you ever factor? I know your model doesn't factor that in, or maybe it does. I don't know how sophisticated or how detailed you go. You can't really put a number though on, hey, this guy hasn't played in a while. So do you factor that in at all? Or you just let your model do the work?
No, I do run a regression answer within my model that takes a very, very slight percentage that I go in hand and kind of discount a certain player. And I do the same answer, by the way, for anybody that would have a limited sample size of information. That would be your random golfer that's just gotten on the tour and they're showing as if they're the greatest player of all time because of one quality performance. And we know that to not be the case because regression is going to take place. So I do account for it. It's something that I put such a small percentage in that it doesn't necessarily make a huge difference. It did push Connors down, and frankly, it pushed Russell Henley a little bit further down than him not probably being the number one player for me for that reason. But I don't know. I still think that the Connors Poston route is a really savvy way to start a build. I don't have a problem with either one of those two names. And I mean, if you want to discount Connors ever so slightly because of that, I understand. But I think it's kind of in this particular situation, we're talking about a month or two here of a player, and I'm sure they've been practicing.
Edward Gales. Yeah, that's true. Like, I mean, listen, it's not like competition, but like, it's not like they haven't picked up a golf club in 2 months. So I think that's a smart answer. Edward Gale says Spencer's model is very undulating. And Zach Jeffers and Brent Harris agrees, says it's never Connors week for me. Listen, I get that. Like, Connors is one of those guys that a lot of times he'll be really popular and he'll just kind of crash and burn, but he does seem like at least a decent, solid course fit here. Joel, speaking of course fits, who's next?
All right. So I'll be honest with you. I was planning to take Poston with my next pick. So changing up my draft already. Early changes, not always a great start. But I'm going to go here and I'm going to commit to Akshay Bhatia. This is a guy who I just believe is an up-and-comer. And I think he's more talented than the price that he's been given in this field at 8K. I'm happy to take that. I think he could have been in the low 9K range as well as he's playing. I mean, since October, he's got, T35 at the Shriners, T21 at the Zozo, top 10, tied for 10 at the Worldwide Technology, and tied for 20 at the Butterfield. Now, these weren't like the strongest fields, but he's playing a lot of consistently good golf. And so a guy who's as talented as he is, who's playing consistently good golf, certainly will have some upside, especially at 8,100. So I'm going to go ahead and sign me up there and see where this draft takes me from here.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm trying to track his ownership. I can't imagine a lot of people are playing Akshay this week. Oh, I see it. Yeah, I mean, I Spencer, what are you seeing? I'm seeing sub 10% on Akshay right now.
I see a little under 8%. He is 27th overall in ownership projection.
Okay, not bad. Spencer, you've got Henley, pretty popular. Who do you got in the next two?
So I'm going to start with Brendan Todd. He was the number one player in this field when combining accuracy, proximity, and putting. It shouldn't hurt matters either that he located first inside of my model for recalculated par 4 production between 400 to 460 yards. I keep talking about how you have 10 stops daily there at Sea Island. I think whether you're talking about an outright market, and we saw him drift from 55 to 1 more into that 40 to 45 to 1 range, or even here, if you're talking about him on DraftKings, where he opened up at a price tag that I thought was a little bit lower than it should have been. I'm kind of under the assumption that if you just blurt out his name from the equation, didn't know it was Brendan Todd that you were talking about, I think he's a legitimate top 5 player in this tournament. Now, he's disappointed a lot of people at times. If you want to look at just last week's contest, he opened as the second favorite, provided a top 20 finish, and all of a sudden he's the one that triples or quadruples in odds. So I really like Brendan Todd for my first choice. And then I am going to provide a salary saver here that has some boom or bust potential. I'm going to go all the way down the board. I'm going to take Zach Blair at 6,600. I think this is a situation with him where sometimes his distance puts him in a position to where he can struggle, or his lack of distance, I should say. You get a venue like this where he's a top 10 accuracy player. He ranks inside the top 10 of my model when combining that 3-pronged attack that I keep talking about of the accuracy, the proximity, and the putting. It's going to be a little bit boom or bust with it, but sub 5% for a golfer. Like, I bet him at 300 to 1 when the price open. There are some books out there. You can still find him in the 200 to 1 range if you shop around, but there are some books out there where he is sub 100 to 1 to win this tournament right now. That's a noteworthy move to me for a player that had massive upside potential.
Can I just say that every single person in the 6,600 range is super intriguing to me?
Yeah.
Like, no joke. From Andrew Novak, Charlie Hoffman, David Lingmerth, particularly David Lingmerth, Peter Malnati, Russell Knox, Satoshi Kodaira, Scott Piercy, Zach Blair. I'm intrigued by all of those guys, which means I'm going to have a very bad fantasy week. Spencer, go ahead.
Well, I mean, the reason for that is it's one of those venues that rewards players like that on most tournaments probably cannot compete with the longer bombers on tour, but you throw them in this contest where all of a sudden driving distance doesn't matter quite as much. And I know the venue is supposed to have some rain to the property. Maybe that enhances some of the driving distance more that I ended up weighing inside my model, but it's all of those Zach Blairs and the names that you mentioned that do propel into really quality top 40 sort of options that are playable this week at sub 5% ownership. So I don't mind that boom or bust approach. I think that's one way to consider it. I thought there's a lot of value to be found this week down the board, but that would at least be my 2 cents as why that's probably the case.
Joel, before you give your pick out, do you think, I don't think people have to like buy into, hey, I'm doing stars and scrubs or I'm doing balance. I think you can do both any given week, but it feels like to me, and I actually built a lineup, I don't know, a few hours ago, and I actually built 2 lineups, and one was, I think both were generally like high-end guys and low-end guys. But then I looked at the middle of the board and I'm like, I don't want to miss out on any of these guys either. So for me, I think I'm not going to make a ton of lineups, but I think I'm going to go sort of both ways there. I'm going to have some balance and I'm going to have some, a couple 10K guys and a couple 6K guys in some lineups. Do you sort of have a strategy this week, or is it just kind of a little bit of both?
It's a great question for this week, especially. The reason why is, for me, the answer is stars and scrubs, but it's a little unique this week because my range for stars is a little wider than it normally would be. So I'm considering stars kind of going down to like the upper 8K to mid 8K range. So
Mhm.
you can take 2 or 3 stars, especially if you balance them right, if you don't start at the top. And then, it doesn't have to be as scrubby, for lack of a better word, because of the way you can do stars and scrubs in this tournament. So the biggest thing I will say, because of the nature of this field, like obviously there's no Brahms and Rorys and all those guys, I do tend to think as you get down to the mid to low 7K into that mid 6K that we were just mentioning, that's going to be closer in talent than it normally would be in a more expanded field. So I'm okay with, like you said, a lot of that mid 6K range guys we all like. I'm okay with playing those guys as almost equal in talent to some of the low to mid 7K range.
Before you give your pick, like one of my rules is in anything, because you guys know we all do NFL DFS too. Joel, I know you do college football DFS. I'm always like the guy that's like, let me max out, like let me do single entry and 3 max, because I don't do the 150 max, so I'm not going to just put one lineup in there, because like, even though that's quote unquote fun, like that's just like it doesn't make any sense to me. But this might be the because like the prize pools aren't very good during the fall swing, right? I'm talking PGA DFS specifically, and so there's that big contest where it's like $5. It's the $5 like 150 max one. I might actually just throw like 5 or 6, like $30 worth of lineups there, which I again, I wouldn't normally do that because I just don't do that. But like, this seems like the type of tournament where you could just go kind of nuts. Like somebody was talking about leaving a crap load of money on the table, says Zach Jeffers, like doing that, or just taking like random guys that aren't necessarily good course fits. Like this might be the time, especially with low prize pools in the single entry and the 3 maxes, to maybe just like, throw a little money at some of these big contests and just hope you get lucky. Cause I think this field and this course sort of lends itself to that.
Well, I'll tell you a quick funny story. As you know, I've been playing golf PGA DFS for years now. I play a lot, almost every week. And last week, I only played about 5 or 6 total laps, so I wasn't overly invested. I think maybe I can't really, but I make maybe for the first time ever in years, every player in every lineup that I put out there made the cut.
Wow!
I didn't have one missed cut. No, I didn't have the winner, so I didn't win the whole tournament, but I made every play. So then after the end of the week went through, I was like, I wish I played more lineups. Obviously, I was playing the right guys. I just needed the winner. So, but yeah, so that to your point, right? You can hit on something like that and have one of those types of weeks. You got to just match getting the right value plays with getting the winner, and that's how you hit one. So hopefully that's the week.
Well, Joel, let's try to hit one with yours. You've got Eric Cole, Akshay Bhatia. Who's next?
All right. So with my third pick here, I'm going to go with a guy who has been absolutely on fire, and that is Chesson Hadley. He has 2 top 10s in his last 2 outings since October. In the Sanderson, early in October, he had T35. He is going low. We're thinking this is going to be a birdie fest. He is excelling. Those are the types of tournaments that he's had a lot of success in recently. To get him under 8K, I think it's a great price tag with a ton of upside. So I love me some Hadley this week.
Yeah, looking at his recent history here on this course, or I should say these courses, it's not great. But the thing is, and he's got some good history here. 3 years ago, 23rd. His recent history is great. But Chesson's one of those guys where, like, when he gets hot, like he gets arrogant hot. Like he is just like the approach shots are just it's like 8 feet and in, and he's hitting every putt. Like, if you can find that tournament where Chesson gets hot, like he can really pay off for you. So, I mean, he's one of those guys I kind of wanted to nominate. Oh, we have a guy that we're already starting to nominate, another guy that I like that's sort of in that Chesson mold, but a little cheaper. But I like that pick. Before we get to R2, Spencer, Chesson Hadley on your board or no?
Yeah, I think he's too cheap. It just comes down to that answer for me beyond anything else. Top 20 of my model in any way that I ran it. It's another one of those players that maybe you haven't been getting those high-end results that you want, but because of the lack of some of those like win equity that he brings to the table, it kept him in the $7,000 range rather than propelling up to, I mean, I think he could have in a different situation, maybe pushed 8,500 plus for this tournament.
Yeah, fair enough. So we have 2 for Will Gordon, which I absolutely love. So Zach is nominated Will Gordon. We need one more nomination or I guess 2 more nominations for one guy. Brent Harris likes Gordon. I was on Gordon a couple years ago when he started to like, maybe it was, I'm wrong on the time. Maybe it was like closer to 18 months ago or something, but Will Gordon had a stretch where he was like kind of back and then he faded away. I think Will Gordon might be back. I think this is the exact type of tournament where we see Will Gordon in the top 5 on like a Saturday afternoon, and we're like, okay, yeah, like I'm not even that shocked by that. I think Will Gordon is a great pick. I love this price in the 6K range, in the high 6K range, but I just think Will Gordon's one of those guys that can just surprise people. I'm in on that. Joel, thoughts on Will Gordon?
Yeah, I think to your point, he's one of those guys in that 6K range that has upside where it wouldn't surprise me if he would have in the low 7, mid 7K range. So to the stars and scrubs approach, you can go out there and play guys like Will Gordon and make the lineup work. Right, it's not a big difference. So I like that pick. He'd be someone that would be in my pool here as well.
Any comments there, Spencer, on Will Gordon?
No, I kind of agree with the sentiment of everybody else. I think if you're looking at this of players that actually have potential to, let's say, top 10 the tournament, we don't even need to go to the pure winning of the event. It's probably one of the better 2 or 3 options that you can find based off that pristine ball striker. That is always a quality that can reap high-end benefits.
Yeah, speaking of pristine ball striker, our second guy, Matthias Schmid. He's really been striking it. The putter can be kind of off and on for him, but I don't mind that pick at all. So that's our second guy in. What's his price? It is 7,500. I think the price is right on him as well. Really some great finishes. Andalusia Masters, that's obviously on the European Tour. Second there, that was just in October. Third at the Butterfield Bermuda, so we remember that. And then at the Worldwide Technology Championship, T38, that's certainly not bad. Shriners T26, like this guy is trending, and the ball striking has been immaculate off the tee approach. And again, the putter can be a little hit or miss, but he's been okay there. And we didn't have shot length the last 2 tournaments. Based on the finishing positions, I'd like to think that the putter was probably pretty good there too. Joel, before we get to your pick, any comments on Schmid?
I love Schmid this week. I played him a lot last week. It paid off for me. I think he's one of those guys that the market hasn't fully come around to the way he's been playing. I think he's underpriced here this week, so I think it's a great pick.
Yeah, I love this pick quite a bit. All right, Joel, it's your pick. What are we going with?
All right, so this one shouldn't be a surprise to anyone. If you watch our show, you know this golfer is a favorite of mine. I frequently am playing him in the first round leader market and drafting him, and I'm going back to the well with Sam Ryder. I love the way Sam Ryder has been playing more recently. His ball striking has been excellent. We've seen him get very hot with the flat stick. If you combine those two things at 7,200 in this field, this is significantly underpriced. Sam Ryder's the type of player at 7,200 in a regular field that, oh, this is a good value. So to get him at the same price he would normally be in a much weaker field is a great spot for Ryder.
You know what's funny about Sam Ryder is like, I don't get it. Like, not that I don't get the pick. Like, granted, his approach has been really good, especially lately. But even when he was having like decent finishing positions prior to that, he was doing it in such a way that I don't think like, and I don't use a lot of models, like really, I'm in on like the strokes gain stuff, but a lot of times I'm not actually using a model. I'm just like piecemealing strokes gain data tournament to tournament. It's just kind of like the longhand way to do things. I never get to Sam Ryder because I just don't like, I'm not seeing it with the strokes. And the reason I set it up like that is because Spencer, I wonder what your model kind of spits out on Sam Ryder, because he's one of those guys that seems like an anomaly to me where we're like not really sure how he has these high finishing positions, but they come. So where are you in your model on Sam Ryder?
So there were 11 players inside of this event that ranked inside the top 27 when I looked into expected putting. That would be on similar green complexes, a recalculated strokes gain total to mimic Sea Island, and then anticipated scoring, which is just a secondary factor to that. Every single name on that list, other than 2, would pretty much be your 9 favorites. The 2 outliers to that mix, Sam Ryder, Zach Blair. So I was going to take Sam Ryder with my next pick. I know that the course history is going to leave a lot to be desired. I think he's a different golfer with what he has produced recently with his turnaround and proximity play. Like, that's the main difference for him. If all of a sudden now he's a quality iron player, he's a different golfer than we've seen in years past. So I'm hoping that people don't want to play him because I think he does have legitimate upside here. I think he can be a sneaky play to give you one of those top 10 sort of finishes.
Yeah, he's gained, at least in the measured events, he's gained in 6 in a row. In the 2 non-measured events, one was a T64, the other was a T10. So safe to assume that at least 7 out of 8 he's gained on approach. And some of those have been in a very significant way. In fact, 4 of them were 5 strokes gained on approach or more, which is like pretty amazing. That's just on approach, not ball striking. So I can't argue with that pick. And that stat you just dropped, Spencer, is really interesting. So I guess I'll be in on Sam Ryder too. Spencer, you got 2 picks.
So this is not necessarily where I wanted to go. It's going to change my build ever so slightly here because I probably would rather have the Ryder plus whatever route I was going to do with it. But I will take a golfer that has not played yet during the fall. He did get a very slight reduction inside of my model for that reason, but I'll go with Harris English at 7,800. Inside the top 6 for me in this field on similar green complexes, inside the top 15 for expected strokes gained total. He's going to have to be better on these par 4s from 400 to 450 yards to find success than at least with some of the downside traits that come with it. But when we've seen him at this venue historically, it's either boom or bust. He, 6th place in 2020, missed cuts in 2019, 2021. Thought he finally found something at the end of the season before this layoff. I don't know if that time off is a good or a bad thing with him, but I think English is a sneaky guy that actually could pop to win this event. I thought his opening price inside the 60 to plus 1 range was a number that was slightly too high.
What is it now? Is it still in that range, the outright number?
So the best, give me 1 second there. I can bring it up. The best number that I see in the space would be, you can find a 55 at Bet365, but you're more so looking at about 50 to 1 everywhere else.
Yeah. I feel like that's a guy where, not that I do this a lot, where I don't even want to play in the top 20 or top 40 market, but I'm willing to put an outright ticket on him.
Yeah.
Because you're either getting like vintage Harris English or you're getting the guy who like completely crashes and burns.
And I think there's a lot of players like that. And it's a really unique concept because just because you like somebody in a certain market doesn't mean that they're playable throughout the board. When you talk about outright bets, you want that high in volatility. And I think in large field GPP contests, it's a very similar mentality that if they pop, you can all of a sudden get that big finish. I know that there's volatility behind that pick, but there are certain players that play better in certain areas than others.
Yeah, and to be clear, that's what makes him such a good DFS pick is that volatility, but yet the ability, when we say volatility, we're talking about both ranges, including like the outright win range. So that's why I think that's such a smart play. All right, after Harris English, who you got?
So this is where we start getting a little bit more volatile with this pick. And this is probably why I was trying to avoid this exact route. Now, I get 2 Georgia golfers here that I can kind of point towards that are these bulldogs in this sort of field, but I will take Kevin Kisner. I know that he has been all over the place here. He had a massive regression take place. I'm not necessarily a Kevin Kisner guy. He has made both cuts so far during the fall season. Thought the numbers turned around for him a little bit. If there's any reason to believe that one of these club down sort of shorter venues can provide success, it would be a venue like this to where maybe he can pop again. Multiple finishes over just, if we look, I mean, this is one of those venues where he can win. Like he has a handful of top 10s that he's provided here. So you're obviously hoping that he turns the clock back a little bit, but inside of the top 30 of my model, which if you're looking at golfers inside the $6,000 range, like there's only 3 or 4 names that fit that threshold requirement. And he was one of them.
Okay. So when Zach Jeffers was like, it's never Corey Connors week for me, or how he phrased it actually much funnier than I just said it. I literally never play Kevin Kisner, even when he's a great course fit. And even when it looks like it's the right play. But for the record, that's just my thing. Like I
never play him either.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. I'm surprised you didn't go with somebody else. I wonder if there's enough money left for you. There was another guy that is in the Kevin Kisner mold that I thought maybe you would go with there. But Joel, any comments on Kevin Kisner before you make your pick?
Kisner used to be a guy maybe 2 years ago where I would like as a sneaky play and I would sprinkle him in. And then he had kind of like a downturn last year where he was just awful and I kind of came off. I haven't really played him since. To Spencer's point, he's a guy with history. He's a guy we've seen have good results and compete at 6,800. Like I certainly can see it. I'm not on him, but I can certainly see the upside, especially in this field.
Yeah, and I imagine even though he's got the ties, I imagine he's not super popular because of his recent play, which makes him all the more reason to throw him in your tournament lineup. So I totally get that. All right, Joel, you just got off Sam Ryder. Who's next?
All right. So I'll be honest with you. This was not my plan going into the draft, but the way things have fell, I'm not upset by it. I'm going to go ahead and take the best player in the field, the guy who's been playing the best golf, the most expensive golfer in the book, and that's Ludwig Aberg. Well, easily, I can see you can make that mistake, easily mistaken, because both very similar in terms of talent. But Aberg has just been unreal, and what I feel good about in this pick is I almost feel like he's got a really high floor in that, like, even if he doesn't win the tournament, top 15, I feel like is going to happen. Especially if it's a birdie fest, he's very good at these birdie fests. He's going to have at least one really low day. If you just even look at his more recent history, he's 10, 13, 2, 14. He even won one of the European tournaments recently. He's just playing so good right now in this kind of diluted field. Any result from winning the tournament to top 20 seems pretty safe for him. So I love me some Ludwig Aberg here this week.
For the record, when I try to, now that we know that it's not properly said as Aberg, that it's like I feel silly pronouncing it the correct way. Like, does that make me like a bad person, or am I like, I guess it's like Aubert, which like totally doesn't make any sense to me. Like, I understand like that's how you actually pronounce it, but like, how are you guys handling that situation? I feel like at this point, I'm not going to refer to him ever by his last name. I'm just going to be like Ludwig or Ludwig, however, like that, whatever proper pronunciation it is there. It's probably Ludwig is my guess.
The entire name is just a problem at this point.
It's just a problem. But I want to observe the proper name. I want to observe the proper pronunciation. But when I feel silly doing that, it's like when you go to a restaurant, like and it's like not like an American restaurant, you're trying to say it in like whatever accent that restaurant uses, and you just like feel silly doing it. Like I don't want to do it. Am I weird? Is that crazy?
I think you're right. I think we should just stick with the first name here. I think it's safer for everybody. And it's still his name, so it still counts.
Aubert, like really? I mean, I get the G being silent, but the A being the O, like, I don't know. I don't get it. Anyway, the point is, sorry for the rant. Jaeger and who was it? Taylor Pendrith. I like this team. I think this is a great team. I think this might be the week where Steven Jaeger doesn't get a ton of attention because of everybody that's around him. And I think people are just generally kind of a little frustrated with Jaeger, which I totally get. But Spencer, you're not seeing a ton of ownership on him, are you?
I'm not. And I mean, anybody who listens to this show quite frequently will know that I think he's probably gone off the board for me at the 101, 10 plus times this year. Like, he is the one name that is a consistent fixture for my lineup. And as of this moment, I don't plan on playing him, which is the funny thing here. I think it makes a lot of sense. He is going to be the underrated commodity that does have massive upside. I really like what the audience has put together. You have boom potential in pretty much every single spot of that build. There may be a little bit more volatility, but there's a chance that lineup in a certain contest could make a run for it.
I'm putting that lineup in a contest or two. Yeah, Byron. So Joel, before your pick, I have to read this line because it's such an epic way to have written this. Of course, we're talking back 9 bets, Model Maniac. He says, Zia butchering Ludwig when talking about Aubert is classic. And just the way that's written and all the little nuance to that is really, really funny. Well done, Byron. All right, Joel. I love our team. I think our team is the one that actually wins. Who's going to be last on your team? Oh, is he frozen? I thought it was stunned silence reading Byron's comments. I guess he's frozen.
This is, we have not had this problem, Sia, with him since the last time you were probably on the show. This has WD potential somewhere in this lineup written all over it.
Well, I'll tell you what, since he's in a different class. Yes. No, you're back. Yeah, we hear you now. I was going to say, we could skip you and have Spencer pick because you guys have such different amounts left, but you're back. So who is your last pick?
All right. So because it's my last pick, there's no risk here. I have a final 3 that I'm contemplating. I'm going to put it out there. for the world to know who it is. The final three that I have are Tyler Duncan, Kelly Craft, and Satoshi Kodaira. So again, these are all guys that were in that range that we mentioned earlier. These are all guys that I feel pretty similarly about. It's a tough one for me right now, but I am going to go ahead. It's a tough one. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and take Tyler Duncan here. The reason and to me, you could have gone either way with any of these guys. The reason I'm settling on Duncan is I think he's the most consistent of the three. I want to get the cut. I feel like I can get a winner out of one of the guys I drafted earlier. While he missed the cut at the Worldwide Technology, he had a top 20 at the Shriners, a top 20 at the Sanderson Farm. So we are getting some good golf out of him recently. He's going to find a lot of fairways. He's going to be good with the driver. So in this range, I feel like a made cut you should be able to get at a Duncan.
Yeah, fair enough. I thought all three of those names you mentioned were interesting. I think the one I'd be willing to play of those three is probably Satoshi Kodaira. But yeah, I like all of those nominations. All right, Spencer, you got a lot of money left. How are you closing out your team?
I mean, just to be different, I guess if you made me pick one, I'll say Kelly Craft of the three. I think they're all interesting, though. This worked out in a spot for me where I have the exact amount to pay for this guy if I want to get Cameron Young. There would be consideration had Corey Connors been on the board. I probably prefer Cameron Young to Brian Harmon. I prefer him to Alex Noren. I'd have to get more down into leaving tons of money on the table with Billy Horschel, I guess, which I don't know if that's necessarily the route I want to go. So I am going to take Cameron Young. I know that's a player that my model seems to be higher on than consensus most weeks, but we finally get a spot here where he is going to be by far and away the lowest owned player, probably $8,000 and up this week, just because people would rather go to Aubert. People would rather go to Russell Henley. I think playing Henley and Young gets you a unique nature of that build to begin with. Young is number one in my model in expected weighted scoring for this venue. He has the high-end potential to pop if he can put the pieces together. I think it's a unique build I have here for a golfer that you think of Cameron Young and you kind of want to put him at one of these distance tracks, but I think he's been equally good at some of these club down venues because of the proximity numbers. And just going to throw it out there. It's a small sample size of information. You throw him on similar green complexes, and he was the biggest riser in my model for expected putting. So if he could actually make putts, then we have a different golfer that we're talking about.
Interesting. All right. I like that. I like the putting recognition there too. So it's interesting, Joel. We have, and by the way, I'm surprised nobody drafted Brian Harmon. I like Brian Harmon this week. I'm sure most people do, but I probably on our team, if I could switch somebody out, it probably would be Corey Connors for Brian Harmon. I know there's a price difference there. I would have figured it out somewhere else, but I like Brian Harmon, but I love our team. So Joel, normally we do first round leaders. I have a little game to play. I think let me go to the, we can probably take this down. I definitely think we should, by the way, we should tweet this out because I think these are like solid teams. I think all three are solid teams. And I think people might want to see what's going on here. But instead of doing first round leaders, because we have two courses and like, I know on DraftKings, they don't even have first round leaders out. What if I ran like 5 top 40 numbers by you guys and you guys just give me a yes or no? Not official plays by any means, just like what your gut tells you, yes or no. And let's take the Draftcast board down.
Well, what a coincidence, by the way. You come back to this show and all of a sudden books just don't want to give us numbers to bet on for the first round leader market.
Like the one show, like my comeback show, they're like, yeah, no, we're not going to do that. Yeah. So that's a conspiracy, obviously. All right. So top 40, Joel, I'm going to start with you every time. And then Spencer, you're going to go next. Okay. And by the way, if somebody has a top 40 play, they happen to be looking at it and they want to ask us about it. Go ahead. I'm just going to pick randomly, sort of in that minus 110 to like plus 130 range, just like kind of a comfortable range for me, at least in the top 40s. Let's start with Ben Griffin, minus 110. Joel, you first. Yes or no in the top 40 market, Ben Griffin?
Can you answer pass?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm going to go pass. No bet.
Okay.
I'm going to say no.
Okay. Let's go to Chesson Hadley. Joel, you're starting plus 100.
Yes.
Yeah, I'll probably go yes too.
Okay. Matty Schmidt, plus 105, top 40.
Yes.
I will say no.
All right. Let's go to Sam Ryder, plus 115.
Yes.
Yes.
Sam Ryder makes a lot of sense. And honestly, I wasn't on him before the show, but like Joel, when you mentioned him, again, I have that bias against certain guys that I just like kind of like my eyes like sort of like run past them when I'm like doing the DraftKings stuff. But when I saw what he's been doing on approach and knowing that he pops even before that stretch of approach, knowing that he's been popping here and there, boy, it does seem plus 115 top 40 does seem very doable for Sam Ryder. Spencer, go ahead.
I don't know if this number is still available out there. If you want to push it even further, if you're worried about the course history, I want to say he's plus 650 for a top 20 over on Bet365.
Wow. That is really interesting. Okay, a few more. And by the way, thanks for the shout out, Chris Kiss. She says, see a master of first round leaders and first touchdowns. I do first touchdown scores for like the primetime games for the early edge. And I just hit Michael Mayer. I've hit 4 of these now. And they've all been between like 18 and like 30-1. Mayer was 28-1. It was the only touchdown of that game. And a lot of followers ended up having that, which was really, really cool. Okay, a few more before we get out of here. Oh, Will Gordon at plus 130. I know I love him, but like you guys don't have to love him. Joel, plus 130, Will Gordon top 40.
I'm going to pass.
I think it's too thin at that price. If I was going to play him, I'd probably rather run it up the board a little bit and just bet on the full boomer bust nature in like a top 10 or something.
All right. Edward Gale's going to close this for us. Oh, actually, let's do Chris Kish's first. KH Lee minus 110 top 40. Joel, you start.
Ooh, that's a tough one.
Yeah.
I'll say yes.
I'll say yes. Also, he's another player that I don't mind pushing further up the board into about a top 20 something, give or take like that.
Okay. And I guess we're going to close here. Webb Simpson top 40 from Edward Gale. Joel, you start.
I want it to come in. I'm rooting for it, but I'm not going to bet that.
I have it at plus 115, by the way. This is DraftKings, of course, not necessarily the best number. Spencer, Webb Simpson, plus 115, top 40.
I mean, how much money can I get a hold of between now and when they tee off on Thursday?
I mean, we have all the first round leader money that's got to go somewhere.
Yeah, put it all on that.
Yeah. All right. Fair enough. Is that like legitimately, do you think he's going to come top 40 though? Regardless of the number, do you think he has that in him, or we're still a long ways out from seeing vintage Webb Simpson?
No, I mean, I thought he looked fine at the Shriners. He's the numbers are what you would hope to see. Like you throw him on his, like, Webb is one of those players that when you throw him on a historical Webb track, he continues to find success. Now that turned around in 2023 where he face planted across the board, but 5th place at the Wyndham, named his kid after that tournament. Like at this event, 8th in 2021, 2nd in 2019, 3rd in 2018. He pops at the same venues all the time. I actually think he's bettable and playable in DFS, which is funny that I don't actually have him on my roster this week. But I think Webb has shown a little bit something recently.
All right. I'm kind of sold. I'm not going to bet it, but like it's a convincing argument at least. But again, do we agree that Sam Ryder, and we'll close at least this like part of it, Joel, with this, but is Sam Ryder the best top 40 we mentioned, do you think, Joel, in your eyes? And then Spencer, I'll go to you. Of the ones we mentioned at plus 115, I think it was.
Of the ones we mentioned, yes, that's my favorite play.
Spencer, I know I rattled off so many, so maybe you don't remember all of them, but anyone stick out to you of the ones I mentioned that you really liked?
Probably Ryder. If I was to just throw in an honorary mention, I do like Zach Blair inside of a top 20 or a top 40. You can get him at 2-1, just to throw another name to consider into the mix. I think all those upside numbers that I talked about with Ryder and Blair both come to fruition this week, at least for one of them. Like, I think you're getting the right price to take a chance.
Blair top 40 is plus 165 FYI. And as I scroll down, Matt McNeely plus 175. It's like, man, what happened? Like, Matt McNeely, make your comeback, because he shouldn't be below like Pedrick. I mean, Harrington's pretty good, but like Patton Kazire, CT Pan, Martin Laird, Sam Stevens, Zach Blair, Streelman, Carson Young, Kramer Hickok, all above. Robbie Shelton, all above Matt McNeely. That's staggering. Anyway, all right, Joel. That was our first round leader replacement segment.
That's it. That's a wrap for tonight. Listen, the 3-man, we love your feedback. So while you're at it, feel free to give us a follow. Hit the like button. It goes a long way. The week's not done yet. They tee off Thursday morning. We will have updates for you in Discord. Sign up for Win Daily. Get in there. Get those updates. Get the weather edge. If you are following Steven's ownership article is one of the best in the biz, if not the absolute best. So before you're putting out your DFS lines, make sure you see that, you know what the ownerships are, get your edge so you can win these big GPPs. Those last kind of minute updates on Wednesday night are big, and that can help you get an edge to win for the week. So with that being said, it was a great draft tonight. Let us know what you think about the 3-man versus the 4-man. Obviously, when we're all here, it'll be a 4-man, but maybe for those off nights, we'll stick to this 3-man based on the feedback we get from you guys. Other than that, it's going to be a few weeks because golf's taking a little bit of breaks. We have NFL. We'll be back in January when we get back into the full swing of things and the big boys come back to the main swing of golf. Until then, good luck. If you have some green screens, please show it to us. Sia, what else am I forgetting?
You pretty much said it all, especially when you mentioned, like, listen, even though golf's taking a break, credit to Jason Mizrahi and just the whole Win Daily team, because NFL is like going so strong. NBA is going so strong. We got NASCAR picks. Like, Win Daily's got a lot going on outside of golf. So if you haven't visited, I know there's like all kinds of like free promo codes or free for a week if you're not already a member, which you should be, but like check it out, because especially in that Discord, there's so much information that's passed along. The ownership article from Steven, it's not just an ownership article. He has picks in there that like some of these, like the Frisky Biscuit pick, like it's just crazy the percentage at which he hits that. So keep that in mind too. And I remember now, we forgot sports.